Good evening, everyone. We continue our study in the book of Zechariah, and we are in chapter 6 today. And with chapter 6, we come to yet another vision. Now, you would see that all this vision that we have seen thus far is that Zechariah is looking here, looking there, and asking the angel who was talking to him, and he's seeing a lot of angels moving around. So we are in that mode at this time. It is not God speaking to him in any way, but we will see that in the coming chapters. So just bear in mind that we are still in a mode of Zechariah and the angels. So it begins here, and now it tells us that this is different from chapter 5. I raise my eyes again. Now, this idea of I raise my eyes again is I return, and not about again, not that it's he didn't look again, but this is not what the text is actually saying. The text is actually saying that, well, he has been looking up and looking around. And so now he is returning back to the scene, and he lifts up his eyes and he looked. All right. So, and then what did he see? He now sees the imagery of four chariots going out from between the two mountains, and the mountains were bronze mountains. Now, I think this would be better construed as copper. Now, we need to just understand we are looking at an imagery. Now, this is very important. We're looking at the imagery. And so we see we have two mountains. And the two mountains are actually, how would you say, they are copper. And then in between what we see would be four chariots. Now, the four chariots, and you need to understand the idea here is what is a chariot? A chariot would consist of a horse that pulls a cart that has wheels. And in the cart should be a charioteer. And so the impression that you have is that there will always be a horse and is pulling a cart behind. So the cart behind is on wheels. That's the whole idea. Now there are four of them. Now I won't be drawing all four, but just know that there are four, and we see them as the first chariot, red horses; second chariot, black horses; third chariot, white horses; fourth chariot, spotted horses. So what we can actually see is that we would find four chariots, and they are coming one after another. So the second one would be black horses. Now you notice they are all described as horses, right? Described as horses. Now the third one would be white horse. And the fourth one would be spotted horses. So we can roughly say that we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. We need to understand that this is an imagery, and the words are trying to describe all the motions of the image that Zechariah is seeing. So whenever you read something like this, like in verses 1 to 3, we just have to imagine that is the movie that is being played back. And so there needs to be then some correlation to what this mean, right? We have a red horse. And so we're not talking about the chariots themselves. We're talking about the horses, right? The horses. Quite interesting because the focus is not on the chariots, it's on the horses. And with the horses, we talk about the kingdoms that comes out. And so most people would see that they are spanning the east and west of the world. And these four chariots come out in between the two mountains. As Zechariah looks at this imagery, and then I responded and said to the angel who was speaking with me, "What are these, my Lord?" Remember, my Lord is Adoni. In the reference to God, it would be Adonai. And so the angel replied and said, "These are the four spirits of heaven going out, taking their stand before the Lord of all the earth, with one which is black horses going out to the north, the white going out after them, while the spotted ones are going to the south country." Now, all of these are ideas that is being projected with regards to, in most cases, the commentaries has been that these represent four very important kingdoms. The first one being Babylon, the second being Medo-Persia, and the third one being Greece, and the fourth one is Rome or Edom. And so you find very interestingly, it begins with black, white, and spotted, which means that we are talking about number 2, number 3, and number 4. So what happened to the first? Babylon is over at this point in time. And that is why most people would think that Babylon is no longer of interest in this description. And so the description would be what is current, that would be Medo Persia. It would be Greece that comes along, and then Rome. And so all of these are telling us that the Medo Persia is going up north. The white ones will go after them, that Alexander the Great will come after Medo Persia. Medo Persia go after Babylon. But the final one would be Rome, and they would go to the south country. So that's how it's understood. And these are the world powers that spans east to west. That's the picture that we are being described here. Now, this falls very much in line with the vision of Nebuchadnezzar, the dream that he had of the metallic image. And in verse 7, when the strong ones went out, they were eager to go patrol the land. And he says, "Go patrol the land." And so they patrol the land. And so basically telling us that they actually conquered the entire land. And then he called out to me and spoke to me, saying, "See, those who are going to the land of the north have appeased my wrath in the land of the north." This is where God allowed Babylon to apply destruction to uh, the land of Israel, to the kingdom of Judah, but they went overboard, and that's what the earlier chapters is talking about, that God is angry with them, not because they didn't do the job, they went overboard to do the job by destroying the temple as well. And so the second kingdom, which is in the black, went up to appease my wrath. Now, this idea in verse 8, to appease my wrath, literally, how should we say? It is to settle, to calm down, and it is not wrath in the word in the Hebrew. This is to calm my wind, my ruach. But in principle, the understanding is God was angry with the land of the north, which is Babylon, when they went overboard. And by taking over Babylon and replacing Babylon, Medo Persia had calmed down the wind of God. That would be a better way of explaining it. But yes, it does refer to the anger of God. I'm just trying to show you what the original Hebrew was trying to say here. In verse 9, we now have another issue, another imagery, another vision. The word of the Lord, which is davar, which usually means an issue, usually means an issue, and then came to me saying. Now, in this case, you find that this is very similar to how God spoke to prophets. And so we are now seeing no longer imagery, no longer asking the angel what it means. And in verse 9, we read that now God's word, the issue of God, came to Zechariah. And this is what God is saying in verse 10. In verse 10, he says, Take from the exiles. Now, understand this. Exile would mean people who are in captivity. So always remember this word here is a very peculiar word that it is used very specific to those who went into captivity. So in the era of the Babylon Empire, we have Judah being taken into captivity by Babylon. And so people here were taken to Babylon. When you are in Babylon, the view from Judah would be people are now over here in Babylon. They are no longer in Judah, and so they are seen as exile, held captured. So they are captured and kept in Babylon. So that's the word for exile. And for these people who are not in Judah and is viewed from Judah, then we have a couple of names here. There is Cheldai, and then we have Toviah, and we have Yedaiah. And then you shall go on the same day and enter the house of Yoshiah, the son of Zephaniah, where they have arrived from Babylon. So what has happened in this verse 10 would be there are people who have come back, right? They have come back. These are the exiles who have come back from Babylon. That is what this means. Now, what is important is what comes hereafter. The instructions of God that goes to Zechariah with regards to these people who are now back in Judah. In verse 11, the instruction says, Go and take silver and gold from these people here. These people who came back from Babylon, take their silver and gold, and then make this word crown literally means I guess you can say that they are crowns, they are wreaths, something that encircle the head. So this word here means that you've got a head, and then you have something on top of the head, something encircling it. And that would reference as the crown or a wreath, something that is in a circle that's placed on top of the head. And so in this case, it is gold in color, right? It's gold in color. And so it would be something that has to be placed on top of the head. So gold and silver. To make this, we now need to know that this word here is not crown, but it is crowns. It is plural. That makes a lot of difference. In fact, it should be seen as two crowns, right? Two crowns, not one, but two. So remember, these is anomalies of translation. The first crown is to put it on the head of Yehoshua, the son of Yehozadak. This would be the high priest. The high priest is called HaKohen HaGadol. This is a very important part because now you notice crowns was put on top of the head of the high priest. So there is an aspect of rule, of leader, of authority. And then you should say to him, who is him? Yehoshua, son of Yehozadak. This is the hymn. Says this, Jehovah Zebaoth says this, the God, the Lord of all the 12 tribes says this, behold, it says here, behold, there is a man. Now, I want to point out to you that all these are very peculiar. There is no capital letter or these are all small letters. There is a man. Now, the man has a name, and his name is branch or sprout. Or if you like, you should use its Hebrew name, right? The Hebrew name is this name here, and this name is Zema. So his name is actually Zema. His name is actually not Branch. That would be a much better way of putting it, because when you call somebody by name, you don't use the translation of the name. You actually use the actual name itself in Hebrew. So his name is Zema. And he will be the sprout. He will be the, how would you say this? He would be the sprout who will spring out. So branch out literally means to spring out. He will spring out, flourish. Basically, you would see it this way. You have the ground, and then you have the sprout comes out. So this would be the Zema. And he will be there in his place. where he is, right there in Judah, and he will build the temple of the Lord. And so this would be a small he, and this is a small. All of these are interpretation of the translator. And so this person here is actually Zerubbabel. And you should understand that he has the second crown. He has the second crown. And so his job is to build the temple of God. So now we have two persons, Joshua and Zemah. Verse 13. In verse 13, it says, "It is he who will build the temple of the Lord." Small h. He would be Zerubbabel. And then it says, he will bear the majesty. Now, the idea of majesty here would be the splendor, the glory, and he will sit and rule on his throne. So understand this. This is not necessarily speaking of a royalty in a kingdom, because Zerubbabel, it was never a king, but he operates like a king. And together with Yehoshua, the high priest, now we have two parties. And so he will be a priest. He shall sit on his throne, and the priest shall be, well, this is a problematic translation. Right? This is a problematic translation. Let's retranslate this. It says here, and the priest. And the priest shall be. Now we have two ways of translating this. The first way would be shall be on uh, on his throne. The second way is translated shall be before his throne. Now, what difference does that make? So, before his throne would be before the throne of Zerubbabel. And so it will be seen always as Yehoshua, as a high priest, will always collaborate with Zerubbabel to be the twin leaders. And then it says here, and the council of Shalom will be between the two. Now, between the two, the word officers here does not appear. Between the two of them. So the council of Shalom will be complete. So you have the priest who will collaborate with the royalty. So we have both priesthood and royalty. And together we have the completeness, and this is called Shalom. This is complete. And that is the description here. So God is basically telling Zechariah to make sure that they understand that there will be two parties that is required to make sure the temple is built correctly. And thereafter, the council will always be between the royalty and the priesthood. So there will always be two parts joined as one, and then there will be peace. That would be how it is said here in verse 13. In verse 14, it says here, now and in this case, again, remember I mentioned to you, this is in plural. The crowns will become a reminder, will become a remembrance. Remembrance will become a memorial in the temple of the Lord. So what it means is this: somewhere in the temple of God, they will hang two crowns, right? Two crowns. So we will use this two crown concept. So crown number one and crown number two, and they will be hanging down for memorial. That is how it is viewed. So this is the memorial. Why? It is actually to these people, to Chelem, Tovia, to Yedaya, and then to Chen, the son of Zephaniah. So there are four of them who has contributed the gold, right? The gold and silver. And this will be the office of the royalty and the office of the priesthood. And that will always be there before them. Now, the final verse in verse 15 is often read as something more future than Zechariah's near term. This seems to be with regards to a further discussion. It says here, and then those who are far away. So these are people from remote areas. They will come and they will build the temple of the Lord. So now, at the time of Zechariah, they are already building but it's a small temple. And so it's generally understood that this is sometime in the future. And many people think of it as the Ezekiel chapter 40 to 48. They talk of the third temple. It says, when you see people who come far away to come to Jerusalem and build the temple, at that time, and then you will know that the Lord of hosts has sent me to you, and it will take place if you completely obey. Now, the idea of obey here is to, this word completely obey is to hearing, you will hear. You should definitely hear. This is how it means. Listen to the Lord your God. While we have a word missing, is to listen to the voice or the sound of the Lord your God. Basically, it's a very concrete idea here that they must hear the sounds or the voice of the Lord your God, and they go and do it, and then you would see At that point in time, people from far away lands will come back to build the temple of the Lord. Now, who would these people be? Uh, Largely, in terms of its interpretation, will be the house of Israel. Because if you understand, at this point in time in the book of Zechariah, it is a house of Judah that has come back. So in the end days, in the future, with regards to Ezekiel chapter 40 to 48, it will be those who will be from far away, house of Israel, they will come back and rebuild the temple of God. So that would be how verse 15 is understood. And so chapter 6 carries this kind of a notion. And you notice that this kind of a prophecy, it is not as clear as we normally have it in the old days with Isaiah, with Jeremiah, with Ezekiel. And we now come to Zechariah. It's towards the end part of what the Jews would call the period of prophecy. And that is how it is understood. So with this, we come to the end of Zechariah chapter 6.